Hey Josh, what is one good tequila for a nice conversation?
One excellent tequila for a nice conversation is Casamigos Blanco. Cheers to good vibes and great company.
Cheers. Welcome to Tequila Chats. Today's guest is Michael O. Michael is the founder and president of TSP Smart Spaces, a visionary transforming how we live and work through smart technology. For being part of Tequila Chat.
Oh.
It only took us how many months or years with this?
With your there's a little travel and trying to coordinate everything.
It's so good to finally have you here. So thank you very much and cheers to you.
Cheers, absolutely.
Cheers to this conversation. Yeah. Looking forward to that. So, as you know, Tequila Chat, it's about kind of like finding out from very successful entrepreneurs what does it take to get to that level of success. Right. And as we've had this conversation before, the origin story is a very important part of that articulation because I think that informs where you come from, informs where you are right now.
Right.
And so tell us a little bit about your origin story.
Well, I mean, I think I've come, my parents are Korean. They migrated to the United States in the late 60s. Mm-hmm. And I was born and raised in Alabama, of all places.
Oh, so wow, Alabama.
Really, down south. And basically, I came to Boston because I got into MIT. My brother had gotten into MIT 4 years before me, so I said, follow in the footsteps. Let's see what and applied and got in, and I didn't really even.
What did you go to MIT for?
Well, for aerospace engineering.
Okay.
And I loved math and science as a kid, but I loved computers as well, right? So, but of course, like back then, I mean, this is 1991 that I started at MIT. Yeah. And so it's just the dawn of the internet, really. I mean,
yes.
I think
I was there.
Right?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Right. And even Zuckerberg wasn't even at Harvard, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is even pre-Facebook and all of that stuff. So I came to Boston, and I remember in my first semester at MIT, I was looking to just make a little extra money on the side. And I had worked in a computer shop as I was, a kid in high school, and got to sort of help people with computers. So I said, I'll kind of take this computer knowledge that I have, and I literally went around Boston on a bicycle with those little flyers, with the little tabs at the bottom.
Yes.
And it was like, this...
The tear down thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Call this number if you need help with computers. And so my first client was actually somebody that worked at M. Steiner & Sons, the Steinway dealer. Yes. That used to be on the Boston Common, right?
Yes, right on Boylston.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Started that journey there, so just started helping them with computers, networking computers together, the whole thing, right? And so, and from there it just kind of went, referred, actually started working with some real estate agents, doing little databases. This is way before, everyone had little databases on computers and servers and all that kind of stuff in their offices. And even started to kind of get into some of the larger businesses in Boston. Mm-hmm. So we started working with Bose, Novartis, the Boston Celtics.
On that computing side of
absolutely. I mean, it took a few years to sort of build our reputation, but we focused on Apple and Mac, which back then was really kind of a niche. Yeah. And obviously we've rode that wave for many years now, many decades, and of course they're such a dominant, platform. Yeah. And so, that kind of started this journey, and it was just really me to start, but then over time started to hire people. Started with friends,
So at what point you started to hire people? Yeah. Because I was reading that you started really the company in 1992.
That's
right.
Right
out of your dorm, right?
Right out of the dorm room, yeah. So initially it was just sort of people I knew through school, and that was within the first couple of years. So by the time I graduated in 1995, I probably had one or two employees that I was working with. And then I had this sort of fork in the road. I'd gotten into graduate school. The aerospace engineering school there is top in the world. Mm-hmm. Got in early and said, okay, well, clearly my path is here, right?
Yes, this is it.
This is it. And so went there, and I remember going from, undergraduate's so great. Like, you just learn so much about everything. But then the master's program, you start really focusing down. Mm-hmm. And I realized a semester in, the only places I was going to go from there, if I really wanted to succeed in that world, was NASA, because places like SpaceX didn't exist back then, or defense department, Lockheed Martin,
Yes.
making fighter jets and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And I realized that you really have to be the top of the top of the top to get the best jobs there. And I kind of knew, I was a great student, but I kind of knew like A, that my passion wasn't there,
Yeah.
and B, I really didn't. I wasn't that top student.
So at what point did you transition all of this into that home automation, and why? Why home automation?
Well, what ended up happening from there is like I dropped out of graduate school, and then I really started to go into the IT side of the business, helping computers. So, and of course, meanwhile, there's all of these things happening in the world, right?
Yeah.
You've got smart home as a technology started to kind of come out in the 90s, but it was very ancient by our
Yes,
standards, right?
yes.
I mean, Bill Gates had a smart home of the future in Microsoft,
No, yes,
and
yes.
it was by today's standards.
I do remember I had this listing very early in my career, and it had a smart home. I don't know, like the brain of it was an entire room,
Yeah.
and they were literally just to turn on the speakers. It was
Yeah.
like a completely different
Yeah,
technology
absolutely.
we have right now.
Absolutely. And what we found, like, we didn't install those systems. That was like kind of pre when we got into it. But we
Yeah.
found that we were working with these executives in these companies, in particular, like one small financial firm that's an investment company that we were working with. And, he had a system like you're describing, racks of equipment, but
Yeah.
it didn't work.
Yeah.
And it didn't work because it was complex. It wasn't well designed, but it was hugely expensive.
Yes.
And he told me a story like he walked in one day and one component in that system had failed, and he couldn't even turn on his lights.
Yeah.
And the way he described it was, my smart home became dumber than a dumb home.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't even
Yeah.
go in and turn on a switch like
Yeah.
we can in an everyday home, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, he said there's got to be a better way to do this.
But it seems like that has been part of your ethos in many ways, because I've heard you say something about, the complexity of simplicity
Yes.
is what's important.
Absolutely, and this is where the origin story actually comes together, because even though I've never used my aerospace engineering in terms of my career,
Yeah.
one of the areas that I studied was systems design. And what they teach you is, if you're designing the space shuttle, how you design something so things don't fail, right?
Yeah.
And there's actually an entire discipline around it. But one of the keys, and just talking about that guy's story, is like you have all of the things going through one processor,
Yes.
including your lights, including your AV, including your, everything in your home.
Yeah.
If that thing breaks, you got to have a backup. You got to have something that can take over
Yeah.
seamlessly. And so we started to study that, and also started to experiment. And that's really when we dove into it head first. So, I mean, that's a good 15 years ago that
Okay.
we started that part of the journey.
So as you look at that journey, where do you find that the most important tipping point, or maybe even your first tipping point, that point in which you realize, okay, now this is morphing into something else?
Well, I think for me, my journey as an entrepreneur has always been one of discovering, and you have to sort of put this parallel to technology, right?
Yeah.
If you imagine the dawn of the internet and you have the dawn of connected devices in the home, I'm always sort of keeping an eye on all of these trends that are happening and thinking about how do we plug in. And it's also kind of this service mentality, right?
Yes.
Like always find a way to help people to understand that next layer of technology, right?
yes,
Because to be honest, and this is the way it is in every industry, but more so in technology, there's lots of people selling lots of stuff.
Yes, yes.
That's very expensive, and they make lots of money
Yeah.
from selling expensive things, but they don't necessarily think about what is really creating a better experience for the
Yes.
user. And that's the simplicity that we're trying to create. But behind the scenes, it means complexity, right?
Yes, of course.
You see a
It's
rocket
an
that,
entire infrastructure there behind that whole
yeah,
system.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of aerospace thing. You see an airplane, it looks quite simple, takes off,
Yeah.
goes across the ocean, lands.
Yeah.
But behind the scenes, there's so many moving parts
Yeah.
that creates that seamless experience for somebody who's sitting in first class and doesn't
Yes.
have to think about all of
Yeah,
these
yeah,
things,
yes.
right?
But is there a moment in that trajectory of business that you felt like it changed, and how were you able to identify, how did it feel?
Well, look, I think most of my sort of moments of transition have actually been around failure. Because I think it's the failure that created the
Yeah.
opportunity to sort of reinvent,
Yeah.
right? And so one of my biggest mistakes was, and back when we were doing a lot of Apple, we thought we could do something similar well, we did kind of have something similar to the Apple Store, right? We sold Macs and we serviced Macs and those types of things. And I remember it was actually somebody in real estate in the commercial side persuading me to expand into Patriot Place down by Foxborough Stadium. And, you know, and it was going to be this great thing commercially, and it was a terrible idea. And it's because I didn't understand, as a business person, retail, right?
Yeah.
It's a totally different, you know, you've got to understand traffic, footfall, all these kinds of things. And if I understood all of that, then I would have immediately said it's a bad idea, right? You know, given what it is that we were selling, who we were selling to, the footfall for that area and that kind of stuff. But I made the mistake, you know, signed a lease, you know, invested $100,000 in building out the space and the whole thing, right? And then when it didn't work, left a huge crater, you know, in my balance sheet, right?
Totally, yes.
And at that point,
and
you
your
know,
plans, yes.
and the plans, and it ended up like we had very good sort of a service business going on, and ended up, you know, everything else got sucked into this black hole, right? And I faced essentially personal bankruptcy, you know, huge amounts of debt and all this kind of stuff, and I basically had to sell my business, and I was on like literally within a day of signing the sort of agreement. And that same client I was telling you about with the smart home thing.
Yes.
He was my second largest client by that point. And I wanted to just give him a heads up and say, you know, look, I'm selling my business. This is what's going to happen. And he sat down with me and he said, tell me your story. Like, what's going on? Really, like, how did you get here? What's going on? And I told him everything that, you know, I just told you. And within a few days, he had said, all right, I'm going to invest in your business. And I'm going to allow you to keep control of your destiny. And do it. And to me, I think, while it's not like success, and I think probably a lot of people in business, like me, your success never really comes in one, you know, instant. It was sort of a moment when I sort of felt success in the sense that somebody really believed in me, despite the fact that
you were going through all of this stuff.
All of this stuff. I mean, on many objective measures, I was a failure as a business person, right? But he looked at it as I'd made a bad mistake, but one that had really kind of affected everything else that I had done good. And he wanted to pull me out of that. And he's still an investor today. He's our only investor. And it is, you know, what I would call an angel investor, right?
An actual angel investor.
And to me, that success comes from the integrity of being who I was at the time, being open, being honest. You know, if I hadn't called him up and I just signed the piece of paper, it would never have happened. Right? And who knows where the path would have taken. You know, maybe I would have gotten a high-paying job and I'd be better off. But, you know, to me, like, that's my journey. Has always been failure, but then the ability to reinvent.
So for that growth, when you're looking at your business growth, do you think that you get more out of those failures or out of the successes?
Well, I mean, I think that what you do...
In terms of growth.
In terms of growth, I mean, from that failure came the understanding that that smart home, in terms of working in that world versus the IT side of it, had a lot of potential, right? Because it was somebody that was obviously my investor saying, you have done this work with me, I believe in you on the smart home side. We said, well, look, let's work on this together and let's see where this could go. And now probably over 60% of our revenue is in sort of technology in the built environment. And that's both commercial and residential AV. So to me, it's that sort of breaking it and then being able to retool it, that success comes from the ability to reinvent.
Is that you know, I think that with failure is that the notion of you can just fold and, you know, and walk away, or what opportunities come out of that, you know, of that failure. And I think that that's the decision that the entrepreneur has to make. And it seems like you made in your case.
I mean, and I think every fork in the road that an entrepreneur has, I mean, I look back and I've literally had this company in one form or fashion for 34 years. Right? And
you've been doing this for a while.
And it's if you think about all the stats about startups and the percentage of, you know, startups that fail in their first year, right? I mean, I don't know what the percentage of companies are that are startups that last 30 plus years. But I'm also in the technology space, which means the service that I was providing now versus 10 years ago versus 10 years before that is completely different.
Yes.
So by the nature of that, you have to reinvent. And so maybe that's sort of my secret to success is always sort of reinventing, in that sense. But yeah.
But what have you learned from your success? I think it's sometimes you get, more of a lesson learned from a
Yes.
failure or a challenge. But what do you feel you have learned from your success?
Well, I will say that it's funny because I talk to a lot of startups in the work that we do, because we do a lot of work with startups, and I'm on panels. And of course, the startup trajectory is sort of get rich fast, right? I have a great idea.
That seems to be the idea. That's the purpose. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Get the investment, and then you develop it, and then you sell it, and all that kind of stuff. And for me, I don't have good advice for that trajectory, right? Because my advice has been one of developing relationships, doing it with an integrity, trying to be open and honest with the people that you're working with, and eventually that comes back around.
Yes, yes.
That investor I knew for 10 years before we had that conversation. And, started with a very transactional, I want to buy this server, I want to do this, developed a relationship from there. Those things don't happen overnight. You cannot just sort of magic up that kind of trust and honesty.
No, yes.
And, I think that sort of longevity and integrity, that's where my success has always come from, is like persistence. Yeah, there's lots of that, just simply, keeping going when it really doesn't make sense to keep going sometimes. And that also is a weakness in a way, like as an entrepreneur. Right?
Yes, it could be. If there is not an end to it in some ways.
Right. Yeah. You have to have some vision to sort of persist and get through. And so, but I think that combination of the persistence, but also really trying to operate within this world where there's so many people trying to make money fast. That people actually see that and connect with it.
So what moment of success are you the most proud of when you think about it?
Moment of success, when we built this space that we're in, we're in our showroom, there is a moment of pride when you sort of sit here and you think you've gotten to a point where you have a company that's sustaining a number of employees, all the payroll, all the overhead. It's funny, my parents are not entrepreneurs at all, and every time we sit down, they always ask how many people that we have, and they always comment how much that must be an overhead, right? How much money do you have to make? And it's obviously, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, it's one of the first things always on your mind.
Always there,
and when you have a physical space and when you invest in something like this, you always sort of look at it as, of course, an investment, and you want to make money, but there's also the sort of pride in kind of putting down a stake and saying, this is who we are, this is where we are, we're building out this space to show the world who we are. And I think there's real pride in this space, and as we built it and as we've designed it and how we've used over the last 3 years to really show who we are and our capabilities. And I think while I think that my journey has a lot of small successes, that's one where I sort of say, that was a lot of money spent. Because, when I tell you about that experience at Patriot Place, there's sort of a PTSD.
Oh yes, I'm sure.
Building out a space, going in and investing a lot of money, and then you think to yourself, am I making the same mistake again?
Yes.
Right. And then sort of realizing, and the realization comes much slower, right? It's not like day one in the showroom, but as we tour people through, as we do events, as we, and to be honest, as we get business through those conversations and those discussions, then you feel like I've made the right decision this time. So
I hear it's really interesting, because I'm just thinking about my kind of like my own business, and how in some ways those physical elements that are just things become an extension of your story. And so it's how do you articulate, for your success, how do you articulate your story even through those physical elements that are around you and that are part of your business.
And because we both work in the built environment, right? But particularly with our work in technology and integrating with, architecture, our showroom needs to reflect what we do, but also the quality and the experience that we're trying to, construct with every one of our projects in the built environment. It's very key that it does tell that story, right? And that every little detail is considered. And, that is, I think, the art of creating physical spaces. And you know, I mean, for what you do, you're creating a space that maybe is staged just for open houses and those types of things, but needs to connect with somebody emotionally.
Oh yes,
you know,
they do.
very
That's
very
the key.
quickly, right? And for us, it's the same thing
Yeah, it
here.
is.
We can sell lots of things. Like you can go to a Best Buy, you can see all the same things, right? But we're creating experiences, which is why we call this the Experience Lab.
Yes, of course. No, that makes absolute sense. And so, with like AI, right? How do you see those growth opportunities, and how do you see kind of like the future of your business going?
Well, I mean, I think it's fascinating. I mean, we were talking earlier about how my business has been doing this for 30 plus years, and it's always looking at technology as that develops and grows. And AI is by far the biggest change in the last few years, right? And so we're looking at it on so many different levels. We're looking at it in terms of how do we use it internally just to improve business operations, and how do we think about how we grow and what type of resources that we need. And I say it all the time in my talks that people need to work with maybe younger generations that don't have experience but have a lot more experience with technologies and how to use it. And you mix that with people that are more experienced and have kind of decades within the industry, and try to mix that up a little bit. You know, and we're trying to do that ourselves. But also there's this entire layer of AI products and services. And we're really trying to think about how AI works itself into the home, right?
Yes. Well, the thing about AI, and I think you and I had this conversation before, is that AI right now feels like it is elective, but I think it's going to come to a point in which it will not be. So it's one of those it's not like I don't want to have an Instagram account and then you can live without one.
Right.
With AI, it's like, it's going to become ubiquitous, and it's going to be in every single thing that we do. And so it's an interesting kind of like conversation to think about how does it affect our interaction with our home, and what does it mean actually for business development as the technology just changes so rapidly and moves the needle so fast.
And I think it becomes pervasive because AI is involved, of course, in a product or service that you might interact with, but it's also now working its way into the development of those products. I mean, I was on at a talk where the CEO of Boston Dynamics was talking, and he was talking about how they're using AI to train robots to have more natural human movement, right? And so maybe they themselves are not sort of AI-driven robots, right? But they're still not going to be the Skynet sort of Terminator kind of scenario. But
hopefully not.
No, hopefully not. But they're being trained to interact in a way that is more human-like, because they're recording humans with those motion capture systems, and then training using AI models to make the robots, sort of feel more natural, interact more naturally. And so all of these things are going to work their way into the everyday. I mean,
yes, it is.
One of the predictions in that conference was that by 2030, that at least in luxury homes, people are going to have sort of essentially assistant robots, right? In some form or fashion, right? And they'll become everyday, and it's almost like you even have to think about, if you're designing a home, where's my robot going to charge?
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Like little things like that, where it's like, and technology is changing so quickly. It's definitely.
No, it is an interesting thing, because it's I think last night somebody was saying it's a utility, right? And so as a utility is going to really redefine our business, and is going to redefine how we can accomplish that business success. Because it's going to be about not only adopting but also adapting to technology. Our business strategy to that technology.
And I think people are just starting to see how AI and systems like ChatGPT are working their way into mobile devices, but it's going to create a societal shift in a way, because I'm sort of doing a DIY project at home. It's a large shed that we're kind of doing a bunch of work on, and in terms of figuring out how to do things that I've never done before. You could Google, which a few years ago would be the only option, or you would ask somebody with the level of experience on how to do things. And now you have this third option, which is you just pull out your phone, hit the voice thing on ChatGPT, and you have a conversation with it. And I mean, it's mind-blowing in the last sort of 12 months how naturally conversant, these systems are. It's not just type in a prompt and see what you get back. You're having a conversation about how to best, do oak cladding, in a vertical orientation, making sure that you're keeping things, waterproof. I mean, I equate it to having, a dad that's done a bunch of DIY or worked in construction. Like, it's not going to be the reference. You're not going to pay attention to absolutely everything. It's not 100% accurate, but it's a hell of a lot more accessible than anything else. Like Googling, that and reading through 17 blogs. Yeah. But you're having a conversation. It's actually telling you, well, you should think about this. Maybe look at these. I mean, it's a very different way. And I sort of think about, I've got kids who are 14 and they're growing up in this, AI first kind of world. Yeah. And what their interactions are going to be like is
Plus the applications, I think, to business development and for that, for that matter, to business success are going to be just, we'll see. Incredible.
Absolutely.
But let me ask you, from your experience, from your point of view, what is the key to success?
From my point of view, I think it's first probably slowing down. Like, I know nowadays, and especially with AI and technology, the idea is faster, learn everything. But I do feel like there's value in taking this longer view, as we've talked about, but also sort of wider view, right? I mean, society
Explain to me.
Well, AI is a great example, right? Yeah. And there's an electrician that worked on a house many years ago, and he asked what his daughter should go into. And this is pre-AI. And I said, well, nowadays, if you have a business degree, or back then, if you have a business degree and a computer science degree, the combination of those two things is very powerful. And that's what she did. I mean, it's amazing that she took my advice. Very successful, right? I mean, coming out of college and everything now. But nowadays, if I was to give that advice, it's sort of looking at what's happening in the world, right? You could say, combination of learning AI and being a lawyer is a really good idea, right? Because all of these legal frameworks around, digital information going in, is it copying? Is it, and then how does the attribution of credit going if AI has an idea, and is it the person that asked the prompt that owns that idea? Yeah. There's all these, frameworks around it. So I think if you sit back and you look at how fast things are changing, you'll see there are opportunities for, careers that don't exist today, right? Because my career didn't exist. Yeah. I was one of the first sort of IT consultants, but certainly Smart Home didn't exist, any of these concepts. So kind of taking that wider view, seeing where everything's moving, and that's everything from listening to podcasts and all that kind of stuff, but also like not, try to look ahead and sort of say, well, what if AI works its way into all the products and services?
So you said that the key to success is opportunity?
Yeah. For me, I think the success is looking at everything that's happening around and being very agile, right, as a professional. Sort of understanding that something new like AI has come out, try it. Maybe if you don't have a great result from it the first time, keep trying it, keep on top of it, because that's been my experience. First time I tried it, this isn't intelligent at all, right? And a lot of people did that, but then I kept back going into it, kept listening to different podcasts and sort of reading blogs about how AI works and just being curious. Yeah. I think that is
curiosity
is one of the most sort of key things, which is disappearing in a way sometimes, I feel like, but if the people that I find that are very successful in life are still very curious.
Yes, so. No, that makes sense. Michael, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's been a great conversation.
Absolutely.
I'm glad, we waited this long, but
but
we did it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And to you guys, thank you very much for watching, and salud. Cheers. I hope you enjoyed this chat, and if you did, make sure that you like, comment, share, and subscribe.